Well, when your sister is Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, who persistently attacks the rule of law, undermining law firms and lawyers and judges and the judicial system, who does not comply with the Department of Justice manual, who does not comply with her ethical obligations. When you're her brother, your name is Bradley Bondi, and you try to take over and become the president out of nowhere of the DC Bar Association, you might lose, and you might lose by a lot. And when you're a special prosecutor and an acting interim assistant prosecutor in DC connected to Donald Trump, who served for Ed Martin, the now disgraced former interim U.S. attorney for DC, and then Jeanine Pirro, you might not win the Treasury position for the DC bar, and you might get slaughtered in the election. I'm Michael Popok. Bar associations matter. I'm a member of several of them. We are a self-policing profession, and it's time for us to stand up and fight. The DC bar, the third largest bar in America after New York, of which I'm a member, and California. Many people are members of the DC bar because it lets you practice in DC federal courts almost automatically. And it's also a bar that you can pass or get reciprocity if you have high enough scores from other states. So it's a 1-2 that a lot of lawyers do early on in their career. It's important. And they take the right steps to regulate their bar. Unlike the Florida bar, of which I'm also a member, who refused to investigate a grievance related to Pam Bondi and her violations of the rules of professional conduct, many rules of professional conduct, including candor to the tribunal. The DC bar had no problem disbarring Rudy Giuliani and ultimately finding that Jeff Clark for Donald Trump, who used to be in the Department of Justice and was the Attorney General at one point, also violated rules while he was an Attorney General. That's what I like. A bar association with cojones. That's a legal term. You're here on a legal AF. Of course, it's a legal term. I'm Michael Popok. Let's dive in. Lots going on in the world, in the courts, in the Supreme Court with emergency applications. I want to get down to something granular, something interesting. I found interesting the fact that in the DC bar, somebody named Bradley Bondi, who was a partner at a firm I know pretty well, Paul Hastings in DC, came out of nowhere, decided he wanted to run for president of the DC bar. Now look, I've been a member of bar associations. I've been on the executive board of certain bar associations. I get it, but you got to work your way up. You got to start on the board. Then you got to move from on the board to like the treasurer position, then the vice president position until you make your way 5, 8, 10 years up the chain after working hard to be the head of the organization. It's not what Bradley Bondi did because he's entitled and he felt like I'm just going to run for president having not done the other preliminary steps. He went up against DIane Seltzer, a employment lawyer, very well respected in the bar. And then everybody took sides. And it's right for the American people and the members of the DC bar, all 38,000 of them, who voted for their president to question whether Bradley Bondi was going to be loyal to the DC bar or was it going to be another opportunity for the Bondis, therefore Donald Trump, to do a takeover of a bar association. You can't sit idly by, Bradley, and not see what your sister is doing. How are you leading the DC bar going to challenge her? Stand up, have bar associations stand up and defend the rule of law. Who could trust you to do that? I'm not saying that, the sins of your sister are visited upon you, but I am. It is a legitimate question that was asked of the voters, and George Conway and the Lincoln Project and others questioned it as well, about your loyalty. How could you possibly lead the Bar Association? How could we possibly believe that you would not allow, like a Trojan horse, you would not allow Bondi and Donald Trump to take over a bar association? It's a prize for Donald Trump. He's busy attacking law firms. He feels he's won with $1 billion worth of pro bono services from major law firms who bent the knee. Sure, there's a small group that are fighting against him. Sure, there's a small group of new law firms that have popped up to replace the coward law firms that settled. And I was a young associate at one of those coward law firms. Sure, I get it. However, you can't attack judges. You can't attack them as and knowing that the judges they're attacking are none of these things. They're not corrupt. They're not criminals. They're not activists. They're not Marxists at all. And how can we trust Bradley Bondi, who got, and nobody can. He got 9% of the vote, whereas DIane Seltzer got 90% of the vote. She earned it. And for the Treasury position, which is a stepping stone in an organization to eventually become president, they killed Alicia Long where she stood. They said, no, you're not even getting to square one with the Treasury position. What's her crime, if you will, against the bar? Just that she's been a lackey and an enabler for Donald Trump and his worst instincts. Ed Martin, the guy that was the Jan 6 denier, who represented Jan 6 defendants, who said that the election was stolen, that he was going to do Elon Musk's bidding and prosecute people from the vantage point of the D.C. U.S. attorney, one of the plum positions in the Department of Justice. It used to be, before Trump got in with Bondi, it used to be the New York Southern District of New York, the Eastern District of New York, the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. There's others, but those were like, we're talking about the major leagues. We're talking about the Dodgers, the Yankees, and fill in the blank of your favorite successful sport team. Not under Bondi. And so Allison Long worked for Ed Martin. Ed Martin's so terrible that he couldn't even get the votes of other Republicans to get him from acting interim to a permanent position as the D.C. bar. That's why Jeanine Pirro, remember her? The one that Saturday Night Live does a great imitation with Cecily Strong drinking wine all the time. She had no federal practice whatsoever. She's in her late 70s, so we're not teaching her new tricks in terms of law. She never practiced in federal court. She was a Westchester County, New York State Court judge for a period of time. That's it, And now she's the acting interim U.S. attorney. Haven't heard, whereas Alina Habba is busy as the acting interim New Jersey U.S. attorney being chastised by judges. We haven't heard hide nor hair out of Jeanine Pirro, but this Allison Long worked for her. Yeah, so she didn't get a lot of votes either. And this is important, not just because I want to be, sort of rubbing my hands in glee because the Bondis lost. It's not that. I take my profession seriously. I take the oath of my profession seriously. I've worked with people in the industry, in law firms, who don't. I always had one rule of thumb when I joined any firm that I joined, and I've only been burnt once. My rule of thumb is simple. I want to work with people who are smart, ethical, and with a good business model. I usually require all three. And this self-policing aspect of our industry, of our profession, makes us a profession. I take it seriously that I'm an officer of the court, that I took an oath that I've just recently renewed during Law Day to defend the Constitution, to defend and to properly abide by the rules of professional conduct wherever I practice. So it matters. And when the barbarians are at the gate, and their name happens to be Bondi, I'm sorry that he's complaining and bleating about, it's became so partisan and all the smear campaign against my family. Wake up. The fact that you don't even have the brass ones to challenge your sister, who may go down in history as not only the most corrupt and partisan hack of an attorney general, but maybe one of the dumbest. Look, I hate using that phrase because Donald Trump does it all the time. But have you seen your sister in action? I know it's difficult. She can barely put a sentence together for an administration that spent an inordinate amount of time bashing Kamala Harris for her word salads. You ever seen your sister talk out loud? I just saw her pronounce the word Mexico as Mexico. Like she was trying to do Mexico, but it came out Mexico. Seriously? You ever seen her when she's on a teleprompter or she's holding a book, like when she was the impeachment attorney for Donald Trump? She didn't know what the next word was coming on the page as she turned the page. But I digress. You cannot fault and gaslight the American people and the members of the D.C. bar into believing that you were not going to open the door and allow Trump and your sister to take over the DC bar, or to at least render it toothless against this administration. Now's the time for teeth, not toothlessness by the bar associations. Bar associations need to unite and stand up. Pam Bondi, your sister, I don't know why I'm talking to you like you'll watch this show. Maybe you will. Somebody will send it to you. Pam Bondi just got through trying to eviscerate the American Bar Association as a political partisan entity. What are you even talking about? I am sure if we go back and do investigative reporting that Pam Bondi, while she was a lawyer in Florida, like I was a member of the American Bar Association. I bet you she was. You know, that is about as nonpartisan, agnostic as you're going to find among bar associations. They just don't like the fact they're never going to find as highly qualified and highly rated the judge candidates that Donald Trump is going to pick because Stephen Miller tells him to. That's who's picking the judges this term. There's 45 left to be picked that were left over from the Biden era at the trial court level, district court level. There's 2 more appellate court positions, and we haven't even gotten to the new retirements and the new senior status. By the time it's done, Donald Trump's going to have like 300 picks. All coming through Stephen Miller. But this attack on bar associations, I'm sorry that that's your sister, but Donald Trump has no problem. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Donald Trump has no problem bashing wives and sisters and daughters of judges. You know, oh, can't be trusted. Judge Merchan, the sister, the wife, the daughter. Oh, Judge Engoron, the wife. Oh, Judge Chutkin, the father. All right. Bradley Bondi, your sister in the same town in which you're a member of the bar. And I'm still pissed off that the Florida bar decided they're going to wash their hands of a grievance against Pam Bondi because they found that, no, she's a federal officer. So what? Did you all fall asleep in ethics class? I missed the chapter when I was taught ethics at Duke Law School and to prepare for the bar and for the ethics exam. I must have fallen asleep or gone out for a Diet Dr. Pepper, which got me through most of law school. When they taught, you have to abide by ethics when you're a lawyer and you're an officer of the court. But when you become a federal lawyer, you know, and especially like the attorney general, oh, you're on your own. You're on your own. Well, she's not a Supreme Court justice that gets to determine her own conduct. Oh, sorry about that. I'm back. And I'm glad the DC bar did its job and elected a very, very capable DIane Seltzer. Love to have her on the show. For those that are listening, I'm Michael Popok. You're here on Legal AF, and I will continue to follow all that's going on in the courts in California with some great new reporting that's coming out. You can only find on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, and I'll see you in my next report. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.